Welcome everyone to the March steering committee meeting. And hope if I could figure out how to, there we go. So agenda for today, we are going to start with a project status update. And then Kevin Berry with NBI is here to talk a little bit about the process he's gone through to get from the technical input from the advisory committee, the technical advisory committee that wrapped up in September, and drafting an actual resilience code. We've kind of sketched out some ideas for a process for getting input on that. And then we also have a special guest here. I think, yeah, Bryce, back with Sedona, a sustainability manager, is going to talk briefly about the sustainability code project that he's involved in, and then we'll just conclude with next steps and recap. Project status update. Kevin?
Yeah, I guess you talked to Chris?
Yes, I talked to Chris.
And you have two recce's, so yeah, I'm not sure how much I want to say, but I'm hoping they haven't confused anything, but it sounds like there's a chance we could see funding resume from DOE. So, which would be incredible news. I'm trying not to get excited until we get through the paperwork. It sounds like there's a window that could close soon, so we'll need to do all of the recontracting, which will take some time, but hopefully we can figure that out next week. So I've got a hold on my calendar for a meeting with DOE next Tuesday in the afternoon. And yeah, I think if we saw funding resume, we would be able to pick up the simplified appendix we'll be talking about today. And I think we'll have a chance to go through another iteration of that, I think, and really work more closely with all of the jurisdictions on the steering committee and our full tag, and really, I think, pull the content that we have in the current simplified appendix into maybe something a little more robust that could then tie into planning departments or zoning or other departments outside of the building code, and just really hit some of our goals. We know that DOE, I guess the one thing to keep in mind though, and what DOE emphasized today, when they said that there's a chance funding could resume, the priorities have shifted. So I think we'll have to rethink how we can align this with climate action plans and net zero targets and some of the language and goals that are no longer aligned with current federal priorities. That at this point sounds like a really small issue to me. We can easily reframe the project. We have an amazing collaborative, a lot of jurisdictions, and I mean, just keeping things moving forward for advanced energy code. We can frame it in terms of affordability if we need to. Energy affordability is the new political buzzword. So, and it's something that we want to address, I think, with the code. So, long-term energy affordability, I mean, that is kind of the intent of energy conservation and water conservation codes, water affordability for this region and energy conservation. So we may see a shift along those lines in terms of yeah, what the framing of the project looks like, but I think largely everything else will stay in place if funding resumes, other of course than setting aside the community benefits plan work, which is of course disappointing. But that's not new news, right? We've known that for well over a year now, that would have to change. So yeah, hopefully we can have a full update next month. I don't know how long it will take with DOE. I'll meet with them next Tuesday, like I said, and yeah, we'll keep you posted. I'm trying not to get too excited. Seems surreal.
Yeah, it was very surreal.
We also,
Chris,
I should say, sorry to interrupt, Leslie, but NBI has been seeking legal guidance. There's a nonprofit, Lawyers for Good Governance. They've been helping us navigate the appeals process. So I think we have a formal appeal open against this project. So there's like some more paperwork there that could take some time to untangle. I don't know. It's just something to keep in mind.
So yeah, and Chris called me just before this call, so I'm still a little flustered and still trying to absorb it. Yeah, there is a small subset of recce projects that ended up on a list that they have as Kevin said, a very narrow window to move forward. Some of you may recall, I applied for, we didn't get the full amount we requested on the collaborative grant that Kevin's managing. So I applied in the second phase of recce for another grant to kind of pick up the piece that we had to cut out, which was workforce development. That one, we would have to majorly rescope. There are issues that have come up since we wrote the initial application that are kind of outside even of like the delay and the question about, you know, the inability to do time extensions and whatnot. So we'll have to see kind of where we land with that, and I'll need some discussions with some folks to kind of figure out where we want to go with that. But yeah, Kevin, if you're feeling half as overwhelmed as I am, was not expecting that today. So hopefully it will be the good news that it sounds like it might be. So
I'm trying not to get too excited. So hopefully we can have more celebration in April if the funding does resume. I think I'm at the point with DOE where I'll believe it when I see it, to be honest. So
yeah. So all right. So we're gonna pretend now that we didn't just get those phone calls, and I'm gonna talk through kind of where we are right now and how we're gonna move forward in the short term. And then obviously if the grant resumes, this will change because we won't be on this like shoestring approach. So yeah, but let's get started real quick. First thing, I just wanted to remind everyone, we do have a set of deliverables for the end of phase one that ended end of September. And I've shared those out with all of you. It ranges from, you know, the baseline survey that Illume did of building departments in Arizona and New Mexico. That got integrated into a baseline assessment report that NBI wrote. There's a summary version. SDR developed a community engagement plan for the project, which I'm guessing, Kevin, in light of all this, we may have to revisit. And as part of that engagement in budget period one, there were a number of kind of engagement sessions. There's one of the public sessions, the recording is available. There was also one done aimed, focused specifically on building officials. There's a summary report of that. And then there's a number of documents around the actual regional resilience code itself, kind of one that's the initial set of concepts that were developed by the TAG. And then there's a kind of a refined version of that identifies just the priority ones for like the first phase of the code. And then there's also kind of a scoping draft for the roadmap itself. And then there's the living implementation guide framework. So excitedly, Julia and I have finally gotten admin rights to the website. And I apologize because I've got like a gazillion things open on my computer, but we wanted to share with you. So if you go to the Resilient Southwest website, and we can throw the link in the chat, there's a member portal link up here. And the password is recce, all lowercase. So you just and I can put this in the chat as well, and that gets you into the member portal. So if you go to the meeting content, this is the one where we're going to have the most information. There is the project contacts, which are kind of the main team on this. So if you want to talk to any of the kind of technical partners, you can see their information there. There is a project calendar, but with everything that's happened with the grant, we've not bothered to update it. It's still linked here. And with the news today, we'll leave it linked because we'll probably need to bring it back to life. But if you go to meeting content, I am starting to upload all the meetings here. So you can go in, there's a little synopsis, the agenda, the PowerPoint, if there was one, a transcript, if there was one, and the recording, if there was one. Not all meetings did we have a PowerPoint. Not all meetings did we do a recording for various reasons. Not all meetings did I remember to download the transcript, but we have all of that. And then even though it's technically not a meeting, I still did a post here for the phase 1 final work products. So you can come in here and take a look, and it goes through kind of the way I just did: baseline assessment report, the technical input, the 3 documents around the regional resilience code, our community engagement. Here's the 2 recordings of the sessions, the summary report, the engagement plan, and the implementation guide framework. So I do have to get our recordings posted on YouTube in order to link them here, and I can't do that myself. I've got a colleague who's helping me with that, so there might be a little delay at times getting things up. But I just earlier today got the YouTube links for all of the steering committee meetings that we have done so far. So hopefully I'll be able to carve out some time and start really getting all of that up, and then some other things as well. So just wanted to share that. So this will now be where you guys can go to get like the information about the meetings, and also look at the slides, listening to the recording if you weren't able to attend. Any questions about the website? It's been a long time coming, but I'm happy to finally be there. All right. There we go. Like I said, I have way too many things open on my computer. All right, so I'm going to kick it over to Kevin. I'll just do a little bit of a framing. The original idea was we had a technical advisory group that kind of gave the high level input, and then a smaller subset with some additional people in a writing advisory group, the WAG, that were going to help MBI take those high level concepts and turn them into actual code language. But without access to the grant for the last year, in fact, the end of this month will be literally a year, MBI kind of had to bring that internally. They didn't have the resources to convene the WAG. And so as this kind of draft has been developed, Kevin has worked with a few people internally at MBI. He's worked with Greg Kinkle, who was on the technical advisory group and the writing advisory group. But just for a little more transparency, we thought it was important for Kevin to just kind of talk through the process he used and how this all came about before we circulated it. So we're not actually going to circulate the draft at this point because it wasn't developed the way we originally intended, and it didn't have that full transparency. Not to criticize, because I appreciate all the work that MBI has done to even get us to this point and keep this project on track, so that when we get a call like today, we're not starting at zero. And I think that's really, really important. But just to help you all understand and all of us understand kind of like what the thought process was, how they went about it, and where they landed. So take it away, Kevin.
Sure. Should I screen share?
If you've got something you want to show, please do.
Yeah, I can go ahead and just bring up the code itself. I don't know if we're going to share it with the full steering committee yet. Obviously, this is for you all, so I really appreciate you taking the time to talk through this with me. Um, we have a simplified appendix, is what I'm calling it, and I think as we've seen complexity creep come into the energy code, right, we're seeing a greater emphasis on not just affordability in energy codes, but also I think simplification. And I don't think that necessarily means we have to reduce the number of pages in the energy code. I think there is some inherent complexity to it, but at least making the intent of each measure legible. I think there a lot of the perceived complexity of the IECC for both the commercial and residential codes is kind of because a lot of the measures they don't really clarify the intent or the big picture goals, so it can be a little hard to decipher where you are. And even for us experts who are dealing with the code books on a day-to-day basis, you can get lost pretty easily, especially in like the commercial provisions of Chapter 4 of the IACC. So one thing that Greg, I had a lot of help from Greg Kinkle. Cannot thank Greg enough just for the help. He's had a lot of experience. I think drew on some experience from some of you all here on the call. Yeah, and of course all of you all building officials who are energy nerds and into the IGCC. I think the intent of the code was not just to include a set of 20 measures that were simplified, but we also, of course, want to make sure that we're actually making the IACC more stringent. But we also really invested a lot of time in making sure that what we were writing in these measures is enforceable and adoptable and something that really can run through a building department and shouldn't be, for instance, managed by the sustainability office if the city has one, or the planning department. So every city is different. One of the big challenges of this simplified appendix, and one reason we have been trying to strategize on how to release this, is that it's just a general appendix. So it's a regional resilience code, but this is a complicated region. We have 5 different climate zones and a lot of different local hazards that need different measures and just a different framework. And what we've really learned is that, especially in home rule states like Arizona, the structure of each city's building department and the way it interacts with the other departments that are involved in land use and permitting and inspection, it's different. Every city is very different in the way that things work and the way things need to be written. So this, in a way, is really just a summary kind of the maybe 20, I think we ended up with 21 in the end measures that were the first round. They were the highest prioritized by the tag. So we did take this from the tag. I was working on this on my own over the past 4 months, I guess. Yeah, 4 months, and with no funding. We didn't have too much time to interact with the tag, but of course I sent emails when I could and got in touch with people. And Greg and I really decided, we had to decide a few things fairly quickly in developing this document. So the first decision we made was to focus on simplicity and really focus on the first 20. This doesn't mean we're not going to address the other ones. Ideally, if funding resumes, we had a full list of, I think the original list from the tag was around 130, and a lot of those were topics or concerns that were addressed in, many of those were not duplicates, but they could be addressed by 2 or 3 could be addressed by one code measure. So I think our initial WAG meeting, which happened in January, 15 months ago, was our first attempt at writing the code. We pulled together ICC, NBI, and a few other code experts who were engaged in the model process. And we realized that a lot of the code language could maybe address multiple categories, and focusing on simplicity was maybe a good idea, and using existing resources. So yeah, back to some of the decisions Greg and I were making. Simplification, and since it's general, there are a lot of issues with the measures. Like, for instance, Leslie pointed out right away that the low impact development, which we have designed looking at Cal Green and LEED and other voluntary certification programs. It's actually behind where Tucson is already at. But it was hard to make something that's tailored to a specific jurisdiction when that jurisdiction is very advanced, while also allowing it to be a general regional document that could be used by other, especially smaller jurisdictions, or an entire state like New Mexico, if we're able to bring them back on board. So I think there were some decisions we had to make around just keeping things simple. Appendices, I guess, also have many functions, but customization is definitely, and flexibility is definitely one reason appendices are used. So we heard from, I think the steering committee, most of all, you all told us, the building officials told us that we needed, like, the best way to really make something that was enforceable and adoptable. What we really would need is an appendix to the IBC and the IRC, and we need to keep it as simple as that. There's a little bit of discrepancy in the scope between the IECC and the IRC and the way they make that, they cut the line with low-rise residential multifamily. I think that line divides a little differently between the IRC itself and the IECC. So we've thought about maybe having a third appendix. Leslie, I think, has been calling this one the multifamily appendix, which is great because it really is. I mean, when we're focusing on resilience, we're really focusing on passive survivability a lot. And I think when we started this project in 2023, multifamily buildings and podium construction was really, I think, one of the main focuses, at least at the initial concept phase of the project. So this is an appendix to the IBC, so it does address commercial buildings. It's general. I think we tried to keep it simple, and we didn't get to earth and materials. You'll see that this is actually reserved for now, and we don't have it numbered yet. So Adobe and Rammed Earth are, I mean, many of those provisions, we have not thrown them out, of course. We heard what the EAP was saying, one of our tags, and many of those provisions are in the residential code. They'll be dealt with in the IRC, not the IBC. So many of them were simply out of scope for the IBC. But I do think that the main model codes we've seen for earth and materials, especially Rammed Earth and Adobe, I think they allow up to 2 stories in some cases. And, we were thinking that we definitely would love to encourage like a small strip mall or a small one-off, 5,000 square foot or even maybe a 1,000 square foot business to be able to build with Adobe or Rammed Earth. We've heard that from a lot of people that, we really want to see code that at least allows, ideally encourages that kind of work for the region. So that's something we'll get to. I have simplified the measures in a series of summaries, and I can give you just a minute to look at these. So we have arranged them by a few categories here. We have extreme heat, water conservation or water management, wildfire and smoke, renewable energy systems and decarbonization, and earth and materials are the categories. And we're calling it water management because it's dealing with stormwater management and water conservation. So I guess the last big point that I can make too while you're looking over this, the measure summaries here, one of the first questions that came up after we realized it would be an appendix to the IBC and IRC, and the WAG convened last January, and we had the last several tag meetings and our focus group meetings throughout the summer. The question was, how stringent and how advanced do we want to make this code? If it's a model regional resilience code designed for the 2024 IECC, we can easily change it for and update it for the 27 or 2030 IECCs. But how far do we really want to push with this resilience code? And is this general document, right? We're making one general sort of this document that summarizes things and tries to capture the basic intent of and focus of the project. We settled on pushing for something that is strengthening to the 2024 IECC. The 2024 IECC, I think, is a good code overall, even if there are some questions about complexity with the credits and dependencies, and some of the credits themselves maybe are conflicting with or can be perceived to conflict with APCO preemption and things like that. I think the 2024 ICC is a great code. So we were thinking, how can we at least push things forward a little bit? So this is not, we did not settle on creating like a better IGCC or, outdoing the IGCC or attempting to hit passive house standards. So this is something that we were really trying to focus on adoptability, and there are some code measures that would maybe get some serious pushback. Like we have a pool size limitation, which we pulled from County Nevada. And we could see that getting some pushback. So we tried to push forward on a few things, but also wanted to make sure that it's really enforceable, adoptable, simple, and just kind of captures the main idea. So not the most advanced, like we're not doing what we could call the max tech version of the code in this, but it's something that pushes the 2024 forward. And I think I see a hand up. So I can go ahead and pause.
Thank you. It's great work. I had a question, and forgive my ignorance, is does the appendix consider, and is there really a difference in consideration for a building that's off-grid versus grid-tied for water and sewer and electric? Do these standards apply for a off-grid home as well as a grid-tied home?
That's a good question. So this is for the IBC, so it's commercial and large multifamily.
Sorry.
But that's a great question for the IRC. I don't think we actually looked at off-grid houses. We were looking at natural and earthen materials for construction. I also heard feedback the other day.
I'm thinking renewable energy is renewable energy, whether it's grid tied or not, and water is water conservation if it's, supplement to something that's on the centralized system or not. But I know it makes a big difference for permitting and cost, and a lot of folks are interested in going off grid for a number of reasons, and I was wondering how much that might come into this conversation, or the code provisions itself, or the design of these systems.
Yeah. I mean, ideally the code would not bar anyone from going off grid if they wanted to and were willing to meet, basic construction safety, fire safety, sanitation safety issues. So I don't, these are not design guidelines. I think maybe that's something that should also be clarified. The high performance code in the IGCC often, is sort of borders on what should be done. But we're trying to write something that can be adopted for the IBC, which is sort of the legal minimum that's allowed to be built. So if we were going to allow, or really try to develop a resource to help maybe homeowners in rural contexts who want to go off grid, I think that might be something.
We're getting there.
I think we're getting some background noise. I'll mute them. Glad you're hanging in there. But yeah, off-grid, I think that is, we could maybe do like something in a living implementation guide. I would say that we would have that would be a resource that could go in there if we decide in the next budget period that that's a project priority and we want to focus on off-grid buildings too. Building deconstruction instead of demolition and buttoning up some requirements for waste diversion, I think, was something I heard. I heard some great feedback. We did not incorporate that into this version of the code, and that's something that maybe we overlooked. So off-grid, I can maybe add to that list too.
Kevin, I just want to add, that's really consistent with some of the direction from the EAP and some of the things we have heard from some of the jurisdictions in more rural areas. They didn't use off the grid per se, but it was a focus more on what does resilience look like in areas where there is limited to no infrastructure, which, it is very much in alignment with that. So I think there is an interest, and if the grant does move forward, I think it'd be a worthwhile thing to at least consider.
Yeah, and Cochise County had some resources for home builders, and I think they had like simplified permitting and inspection, self-certification resources. I'm not sure how that worked, but that's something that we've been meaning to look at too. Hopefully we can get to that in the future. Yeah, so if that answers that question, I think I would love to just hear from building officials and think, I don't think that this document in its current draft is something that any single jurisdiction would adopt without major amendments, or maybe, pulling a few measures from this could be something that would be looked at. But I think we've got the general document here for the IBC. Ideally, the next step then is to make the appendix for the IRC and then start working directly with a few jurisdictions who might be able to take a few measures from these into the 2027 code cycle. We're aware that Arizona informally does the 6-year cycle, so typically following Phoenix, update in 2030 most likely. But maybe if there's a chance we can, if funding resumes, I think DOE would be interested in seeing if we can push through any amendments in the 27 cycle. And I think there's actually a few jurisdictions that have not finished adopting the 24, at least 2.
I'd say it's more than that. There's at least 3. And Kevin, one of our partners, is looking to go to a 3-year cycle.
Okay.
So just FYI. Maybe before we get to open this too much to input, let's take a moment and kind of talk through kind of what we originally envisioned as the approach for kind of slowly getting this vetted out, and then maybe get people's thoughts. Does that work okay, Kevin?
Yeah, that's right. We're going to focus more on the strategy in terms of rolling this out.
Okay, so I'm going to take back the screen.
Right.
I think I can do. And I'm sorry, Bryce, I put your slide in here in the wrong spot, so we'll go back to it. But basically, kind of this is what we originally were thinking, given the limited resources. We're convening a small portion of the original writing advisory group next week to get some initial kind of input on the actual draft. Just to make sure, see how aligned it is with kind of what the intent was initially, especially given the fact that without access to the grant, as Kevin kind of outlined, there were some things that just could not be addressed the way we originally intended. So just wanted to get their thoughts first. And I want to give a shout out to Kimberly Anderson. I had mentioned the core team is planning an in-person meeting down here in Tucson, and she thought the idea of an in-person meeting up in the Phoenix area would be great. And that turned into, can we do a workshop? Nature Conservancy was willing to host. And the idea kind of generally, this came out of the core team meeting last week, is having as many of you as are willing to attend, and ideally a blend of sustainability and building department staff, and taking a little bit more of a deep dive in the appendix. Anything that needs adjusting, anything missing that needs to be in it, anything missing but would rather be in the roadmap than the appendix, and start to identify what best practices already exist. Now, it's very likely we're going to have to rethink this as with the news today, but that's kind of the general plan, is to kind of slowly roll this out and get some good input, particularly from the jurisdictions, because this is meant to be a resource for you guys, and just how do we best align it with what your needs are and where you are at this point. And then the idea was we would do a virtual workshop following that with anyone who wants to come, but particularly focused on anyone who couldn't go to the in-person one. And then we come back at the May steering committee to decide on next steps. But the idea is we wouldn't release this publicly until the committee, and particularly the jurisdictions, were comfortable with, okay, this is something we feel like we can go public with. So this was a general idea. This may change. We're going to move forward with it right now. We'll adjust it as we need to, as we hear more about, what's going on with the grant. But I just wanted you guys to know kind of where we were thinking of going with this slow rollout. Martine, do you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick comment. Nicole and I were meeting right before this meeting, and assuming nothing changes, I think we think May 15th will be the better date to host a workshop at the TNC offices. So informally save the date.
Okay. We'll let everybody know.
Yeah, we'll
and-
touch base later with the details of whatever.
Yeah, and what I'll do, folks, I know people's calendars fill up real quick. We'll put I'll send out an appointment with a tentative hold, just so you guys are aware that it's coming up and you can maybe try to schedule around it, because we feel like this could be a really, really valuable exercise for the collaborative. So, all right. Yeah. And yes, Veronica, the password is Reci, RECI, all lowercase. While Kevin was talking, I should have put that stuff in the chat. So before I turn it over to Bryce, any thoughts, any questions, either about kind of the process or what Kevin presented? Group. Let's, all right. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bryce to talk a little bit about this really cool project he's involved in. Did you have anything you wanted to share on the screen, Bryce?
Yeah, if possible.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. I'll do a quick introduction and I'll share my screen. So, haven't met everyone here on the call, but yeah, my name is Bryce Beck. I'm a sustainability manager with the city of Sedona. I've been with Sedona for about 4.5 years now. Background is largely in greenhouse gas accounting. It is definitely not in code, and so the project that we recently embarked on was a very new field for me, and got to learn all the nuances that go into the code and the different cities that are on different code cycles, and all the various components between the building code stuff and the land development code side of things, which I know you all are all very much aware of, but it was brand new for me as I was going through it. So it's been a kind of enlightening process to kind of have a better understanding of that side of how we can make impact for resiliency and energy and so on within our communities. We started this process shortly after the city adopted its updated community plan in 2024. Late 2024, they had updated their plan on their 10-year cycle. And we had a climate action plan that was adopted a few years before that. So then we had the opportunity to say, okay, like, we have these great overarching plans. How can we then start embarking on trying to get the code to more effectively align with those plans? And so we didn't have goals to try to reduce the kind of disjointed nature that sometimes creeps up within those efforts. And so then we started last year. We started with a company. Where'd my cursor go? Started with a company called Sustainable Investment Group to help collaborate with us in developing sustainability code recommendations. And then we wrapped up the report side of it late last year. And then as our building code and our community development team are going through that update process with our council, and are, I believe, anticipated to go to council in late May for the building code conversations, then we're trying to align to be shortly after that to bring these sustainability code recommendations to them for discussion. And so I'll quickly share my screen. I'll kind of just go over a little bit of just how we laid out our respective planning efforts. Can everyone see this? So this was our initial shot at trying to get some updated recommendations. We've broken it out into a few different sections. We started with some energy components, mobility, waste, water, and climate resiliency as some of the main code pieces. And then we also had a section as we were going through respective topics and thinking that, well, some of these code elements might be more applicable for a program versus a code recommendation, then we kind of categorized it within a different section within that. And so each one of the sections that we have, I wanted to lean more on the energy side of things, but it was a balance with our community development team on where we thought we were at with the IECC codes, as well as where the Verde Valley in particular was also at, because our community development team has been trying to do this in conjunction with the surrounding communities and updating their code. So how much should we want to push one or the other, and trying to get other communities to update? I think some communities might have still been on the 2006s, if I remember right. So just as much as we can get the area to move forward, and versus us trying to push more on the IECC side of things, we're trying to have a little bit of a balance there. But what we've done is, didn't know we have the error there, but each one of these sections is hyperlinked to another section in the document. So when you clicked on one, it would jump to a respective section for the recommendation, and highlights what the initial recommendation is. And this one, as it says, for phasing out of fossil fuel domestic hot water heaters, kind of what entailed the recommendation behind it, suggested code language elements to it. And then we had this component here of an impact assessment to try to get an idea of what level the impact was. Was there a benefit to the community? Also incorporate some estimates on cost to the community to implement it, as well as for just the property owner, for public or cost developers for it. Each one of these impact assessments has a little asterisk or a notation here that when you click on the impact assessment, it then goes to a section in the appendix that will highlight how the calculations were made for the respective recommendation that is associated with it. So we try to make it to where the first parts were fairly digestible, and then if somebody really wanted to dive down and get a little bit more into the weeds on what we're estimating for respective cost for the item, then we had the background information to be able to then highlight that. Scroll back up to the top here. And we wanted to have a piece as well as kind of like the quick summary piece for the respective categories. So for this one, for the energy side of things, we looked at kind of various fossil fuels, solar PVs, green roofs, high albedo roofs, and so on, and then try to get a rough estimate on what the ROI would be for implementation of that. Because I'm sure, as you all go through as well, is that the cost aspect for developers, as well as the business owners and the residential complexes and the like that are looking to utilize this, or communities trying to balance those cost aspects with also the sustainability elements that we're trying to balance. And so each one of these has kind of estimated timelines for what the economic benefits are, the public health benefits, and environmental benefits to the component to each one of the sections. And then also we cover our estimated cost recovery periods and so on. Definitely anticipating we will get some strong pushback on various components of these, but we're viewing it as just as for the recommendations themselves, is that they are recommendations. We're trying to create conversations about what we want the community to look like, how we want to develop our open areas or renovate different components to it. And so we've done a couple of different things within mobility sections of trying to require transit shelters at different spots. That if you're building a new hotel, or you're building a new developed community, that we have designated areas for transit stops for our transit shuttles and trailhead shuttles and so on, that they can get in there and have more accessibility to them. And so we've tried to tailor it as much as we could. And so I'm sure there's probably some good overlap with what you all are doing as well. Sorry, I'm moving around the document a lot. I'm just trying to show a little bit how it works. But one of the things that I think we'll probably get the most pushback on are just in this waste section. This one in particular, the waste recommendation one, is that we wanted it to where somebody that was doing a new renovation, construction, demolition spot for the project would develop a demolition waste management plan. For our area, our waste disposal options aren't all that great, but we're trying to get folks to think more holistically about what they're doing with that waste and being able to send it to salvage yards or repurpose it, or be able just to reutilize that material versus just, okay, cool, we tore it down, send it to the landfill, and then build a new component to it. I am anticipating we'll probably get some decent pushback on this one in particular. So all of this to say is that we've been working on this for took about a year for us. We started early part of 2025, just got through wrapping it up late last year, and then we're taking it to our city council here later before the end of the fiscal year. And our goal is to try to start some good conversations and see where we ultimately can land on getting some of these to move forward. And as I mentioned to Leslie and Mike, is that the work that you guys are doing is also hugely instrumental for us as well, because that can help us build the use case, as well as saying, like, we're not the only ones looking at these things. We're trying to move a lot of these things forward. I'm sure there are a number of great suggestions and recommendations that you all are working on that can help us in our conversations with our council as well. But this was our kind of first foray into trying to beef up our land development codes and our building codes to be a little bit more inclusive of our larger community plans and climate action plan documents, and to start getting the processes to change a little bit that can help us kind of re-envision how some of our communities are. I know I'm talking a lot right now, so if really at any point throughout this, like if there's spots where, if you guys, because I think I sent this over, so if there's spots where you guys want to feel free to reach out to me or chat about or the like. But we had program components too, where we thought aspect of we can try to encourage some of these things that the community hasn't quite done before, the developers in the area haven't done before. So we thought of creating more of a program side of things, and that includes everything ranging from low carbon recycled materials, resilience building performance bonuses, clean energy equipment conversions, and so on. So we're trying to figure out, like, how can we incentivize them, and then also get the code to say, okay, you need to do this. And so it's, as you guys well know, it's a kind of a fine balance there. But this was a brand new thing for us to embark on, and I have definitely learned quite a lot, and I don't envy all of the community development departments and code officials and so on that have to navigate this and find language that can effectively communicate what you're looking for, and also just being able to think of these things, because as you guys highlighted, the code cycles are few and far between. So how do you prepare for something that's going to have a lasting impact, and so on? So with that, if there's any questions, by all means, be happy to chat. But I know I kind of went through a lot of stuff there real quick, but I appreciate you guys having me come and chat with you all today.
And we really appreciate you coming and sharing, Bryce. I think there's a lot of great stuff in there, and it will benefit us as well. So really appreciate it. Some folks are asking if there's a link to this. Bryce, is it okay if I post this on our member portal so the steering committee has access to it?
Yeah, you can completely post it on the member portal, just with the one caveat that we just haven't gotten it to our council yet. So I don't have much feedback on, like, what they have ultimately said about it. And so we are working on that process, but by all means, feel free to take a look at it and post that.
Yeah, and I can put a note to that effect, that this is still an internal document that has not gone to your council yet, so that the members know. So
I appreciate that.
All right, so we got questions for you, Kevin, and then Christy.
Great. That report looks great. I'm jealous in a way they got to do all of those, the reason statements and the impact assessment. That's the part of the work that was missing from our project, I think, with the funding getting cut. There's so much overlap between our simplified IBC appendix and what's in that. I think a lot of our measures we were pulling from sources like LEED and other certification programs in Calgary. And I think I saw a few measures that looked like they were from those same sources. So I'm definitely going to look through it. Thanks for presenting that. And I have a few questions. I might email you some questions after I look through it. Some questions around solar, but the one I wanted to ask now was I saw a demand response question. So this is the hardest one that I have been trying to work through. You have to deal with the IECC's, I think it's C405.12 and 13 or something. And Arizona has a benchmarking ban and state statutes. So we've been trying to figure out how we can require energy reporting or sub-metering. And I was wondering if you had if you were able to find anyone who could help you like with legal guidance on that question, how to push that forward. Because we've seen all the jurisdictions that have adopted the 2024 IC, they just delete those sections because they claim they are in conflict with Arizona state statutes. And I'm sure there's a way to work around it. That Arizona law is intended to ban benchmarking, not energy monitoring or sort of, installing these systems in the building or designing the building to be capable of monitoring its own energy.
Yeah, on that one, we haven't quite got to the spot of most of whether or not the state is not allowing us to do that one. We've looked at it as we try to implement that, of kind of having an approach of an incentive program with that, of being able to that if you are bringing that on, we'll give X amount of percentage component of reduction in like the permit fee, or we have had some conversations with some groups to be able to go through with them if they want to bring that on, that we would like act as a program partner with them to walk through what's needed for the reporting piece of it. But we haven't quite got to the spot of whether or not our recommendations are going to be like saying like, no, you just flat out can't do that one.
Yeah.
In the state. So that's one of the reasons why we've been really trying to frame a lot of this, or like these are our recommendations for consideration, versus if we came to our council to saying like adopt this code and we framed it as an affirmative, then I'm sure we'd get some people that are a little angry about that, or would have some pushback. So we've been trying to have more of just an open conversation with it. But we're trying to encourage as much as we can with our developers and the like to have these systems in place to help them.
Well, I would love to stay coordinated, so I'll send you an email and we can stay in touch. But I think, one role of the collaborative here is to maybe like try to get a unified front on how to approach that issue, this specific issue. There's a few of them too. A few measures that I think I see being recommended from the IGCC and other sources that we really need to figure out like how we should be framing them, and maybe try to do it in a common way across all jurisdictions to help with uniformity, and that might help with builder pushback.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'd be happy to chat on that. And I don't want to fully speak for my community development director, but he has been routinely just like the more we're able to collaborate and get a sense what everyone's working on, that just helps us with our conversations and how we communicate. So we're by all means, I think we're open to that.
Okay, great. And is this a voluntary code or is it going to be mandatory?
First, some of it would be mandatory. Some of the what we're thinking about with the programming side of things is that those would be the kind of voluntary ones to like inch people along. But if we're able to get feedback from council, the idea was that we would make those portions mandatory for the code recommendations.
Great. Well,
All right, last
thanks.
couple minutes. Christy, you're on. You're muted. Oh, there.
There we go. Bryce, thanks for the presentation. City of Flagstaff is grappling with some of the same questions, so I see some synergy moving forward as they are updating their code too. And my question for you is, are you all planning any community engagement in the next few months, or is this just going straight to council to decide, or what does that engagement piece look like?
That's a great question. So my first part of me was just like, just go to council and let's see what happens. And then as we chatted about it more, we definitely are working on getting some additional community outreach pieces built in before we get to council and then after council as well. And so we're trying to set up some calls with our contractors and developers, as well as some residential or community members, just to get some of their feedback before it ultimately ends up in front of council. And then what we're anticipating is that we take it to council. Council will say, we really like these ones, we really dislike these ones, and so on. And then at that point, have another round of community outreach with developers, so on, say, this is the feedback that we got, how can we tweak it to make it as applicable as we can for the community. So yeah, my first thought, we're just going to go see what happens, but community development director was like, let's not do that, let's chat some more. I was like, okay.
Great, thank you.
All right. And thanks again, Bryce. Really appreciate, especially on short notice, you being willing to join us today, because that's I think this is going to be a really great, point of connection, and we're appreciate you being willing to share your work. So last couple minutes real quick, just wanted to outline a few next steps and kind of recap some of the things we'd said already. Keep logging in-kind match. This takes a whole new level of importance now that we had these phone calls earlier today. We've been doing it just in case this happened, and we were able to move forward with the grants. So definitely, if your jurisdiction committed, please keep logging in-kind match. I've done a presentation for city staff on those deliverables that that I mentioned at the beginning, that were kind of the main products of phase 1. I've offered that to other jurisdictions. If you are interested, please let me know. I can do it in a quick presentation, or we can take a little longer. However it works best for you. Happy to do that. We're going to start now, rather than me emailing out or putting things on Google Doc. We're now going to move over to the meeting portal portion of the member portal. As I said, there'll be a little bit of a delay because I have to have somebody else upload the recordings to YouTube, but that's where we're now going to be, that's what we're going to be utilizing moving forward to share the meeting materials and other materials. The core team is planning a brainstorm on the roadmap, and I think probably to some extent the living implementation guide on April 30th. And then, as we mentioned earlier, we're looking to do a Phoenix area in-person workshop on the code itself. Sounds like the 15th will work the best. I'll send out a placeholder. The virtual workshop is TBD. We are meeting every other month. I'm going to keep that as of right now. So we're not meeting in April. Our next meeting's in May. We'll talk about the code then, but we'll also talk about, we should know then a little bit more about what's happening with the grant. And then we may go back to monthly after that, but we'll just have to wait and see. But I don't think we're going to have enough motion on it by an April meeting to warrant scheduling one. So, and it's going to take a lot of work on our parts to kind of readjust and figure out how to adjust things to work moving forward. So with that, thank you all. We will keep you in the loop. As soon as we have a firm understanding of what's happening with the grant, we'll communicate that with you. But again, I much appreciate everyone sticking with us through all this uncertainty. And as Kevin said, I hope this is the happy news we think it is. So, all right. Well,
Thanks,
thank you
Leslie.
all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.